Imagine, if you will, a world without cities, without clocks, without even the faintest idea of what romance was supposed to look like. No poems, no grand proposals, no roses sent in secrecy. Just the earth beneath bare feet, firelight flickering in a cave, and the subtle ancient stirrings of affection long before we even had the word for love. Tonight, let us step quietly into this forgotten realm, into a time when love was not written, but lived and barely understood. This is the gentle story of Stone Age love, the kind you didn't expect, slow and strange, buried deep in time, where a single glance or shared meal meant more than 1,000 sonnets ever could. Welcome, sleepy traveler, to another slow descent into the forgotten corners of human history, where we unravel not only what the world looked like thousands of years ago, but how the human heart began to beat in rhythm with another's. Settle in, rest your eyes, and drift into the soft hush of the Stone Age. Long before the first whispered vows, before the wedding rings and songs, humans were simply trying to survive. But even in those harsh early days, something deeper began to form. It began not with words, but with gestures. A piece of fruit quietly offered, or a warm animal hide laid beside another's sleeping form. In a time when danger lurked in every shadow and life was often brutally short, these small acts were a quiet revolution. They were the earliest seeds of care, of connection, perhaps even of love. Our story begins in the lower Paleolithic, some 1.5 million years ago. Picture a vast savanna stretching to the horizon, dotted with sparse trees and scattered rocks. A group of Homo erectus huddles near a small fire, one of the earliest controlled uses of flame. It's not love as we know it. There are no spoken words. But here, among the glowing embers, two individuals often sit, just a little closer than the others. One brings back food more often. The other tends the fire longer into the night. No names, no promises, just shared warmth and unspoken understanding. Fast forward to the Neanderthals, whose lives were spent in the cold caves of Ice Age Europe. They were strong, deeply intuitive people. From bones and burials, we now believe they cared for their sick, stayed with their injured, and buried their dead with flowers and ochre. That tenderness may have extended into pair bonds, not fleeting, but lasting. A male brings down a reindeer, and instead of eating first, he offers the liver, rich and fatty, to her female and the child she nurses. He sits by them in silence, chewing slowly, watching the firelight in her eyes. She offers him the marrow from a split bone, a sacred exchange in a world where food meant life. There were no wedding ceremonies, no formal unions, but there were partnerships, long-term ones that lasted not because society demanded it, but because survival rewarded cooperation. Imagine waking to the soft rustle of animal skins, the smell of fire smoke still lingering in hair, and the quiet rhythm of another body breathing nearby. Not just for warmth, but for reassurance. In a cold and uncertain world, the presence of another brought peace. By the Mesolithic period, humans began to fish, build small shelters, and settle for longer periods. Love changed again. With more predictable food sources came time. Time to play, to experiment, to flirt. Maybe a young man carved a pendant from a piece of antler. It had no use, except that it was beautiful. And he gave it away. A girl laughed and ran, then returned, placing a woven strand of hair around his wrist in return. Quiet rituals that meant nothing to an outsider, but everything to them. The archaeological record shows us beads, carvings, and patterns. These weren't just decorative, they were messages, signs of status, yes, but perhaps also affection. In modern hunter gatherers, we see elaborate courtship dances, songs, shared stories. Surely those same rhythms echoed in ancient times. A song hummed by the fire, a rhythm tapped on a hollow log, a smile across a flickering flame. Some relationships were gentle, others may have been tumultuous. Human emotions didn't start in the modern era. Jealousy, longing, devotion, they are ancient. A young woman, marked with red ochre, dances alone on a riverbank, hoping a certain boy will watch. He pretends not to. But the next morning, he leaves a piece of honeycomb near her sleeping mat. She sees it and smiles. She understands. And while we often imagine a world ruled by men, recent studies of ancient DNA and burial positions suggest something different. A world of fluid roles, where some women hunted and some men gathered. Relationships may have been based more on skill, trust, and mutual respect than on dominance or control. A man who knew how to find mushrooms might be as valuable as one who brought back meat. A woman who remembered where the spring flowers bloomed might be prized above all. Later, as the Neolithic dawned and farming began, things changed again. Now people stayed in one place. Villages formed, homes had walls, property existed, and with property came marriage. Not just of affection, but of land, of family, of alliance. But even then, in the quiet corners of the day, love slipped between the cracks. A young shepherd carved hearts into the wood of his staff. A girl embroidered secret symbols into the hem of her tunic. Love became slower, sweeter, and more enduring. Imagine now a village perhaps 9,000 years ago. A child's laughter echoes from a reed hut. A woman kneels to grind grain, glancing toward the field where her partner tends barley. He waves, she smiles. The feeling is familiar, isn't it? That soft, enduring affection that outlasts the early spark. That is Stone Age love too. And what of heartbreak? It existed in its own quiet way. A necklace buried with one who died too young. A solitary grave lined with shells, far from the others. We can only guess at the grief, but we see its marks, etched into stone and memory. And we know even then, people remembered. They mourned, they dreamed. Some partnerships were brief, others lasted many seasons. And just maybe, some few, the lucky ones, found that elusive bond we now call love. They grew old together, sharing stories carved in wood, laughter over roasted tubers, and a silent understanding that spoke louder than words. The Stone Age wasn't just brutal survival. It held joy, silliness, infatuation, longing, the thrill of a first glance, the comfort of a shared fire, the ache of goodbye. And so we drift through the mists of time, not only learning how our ancestors lived, but how they loved. So as you close your eyes and breathe deeply, imagine lying beneath a blanket of stars, the distant hoot of an owl echoing through the trees. Someone is beside you, their presence steady and calm. You don't need words, you simply know. And in that knowing, love was born, not in grand gestures or polished poetry, but in the quiet gestures of care, the shared burdens and the gentle rhythm of two lives intertwined. Thank you for wandering through time with me tonight. Sleep peacefully now, knowing that even in the oldest chapters of our human story, love, strange, simple, and unexpected, was always there, waiting. Until next time, dear dreamer, may your heart stay warm and your spirit ever curious. Good night.